What ultimately defines you as a person? Is it your thoughts or your actions? One argument would assert that it is one's thoughts, because they are the source for all action. Indeed, regardless of how rational or irrational our thoughts are, they ultimately give consent to one's actions. One's thoughts are treated as motivations for every tangible action that they execute. However, in defense of thinking, there are some actions where a person cannot definitively claim a motivation for. Examples are actions brought about by sudden impulses, like intense anger. The argument about actions being the ultimate marker of a person's legacy would say that regardless of motivations or thoughts, a person's actions truly define them. This is because actions are tangible, whereas thoughts can be concealed. A person may mask their thoughts through sophistry, but their actions will reveal their true conduct. This brief diatribe is only the beginning of what will be a comprehensive look at which side holds more sway, or if they are equally important in the examination of one's character. Today's video will examine the role thoughts and actions play in a person's conduct, how much of an influence they exert, and lastly, whether one stands alone in truly defining a person's legacy at the end of the day. Beginning with a person's thoughts, one can argue that this is what truly defines a person at the end of the day, simply because most, if not all, actions originate from what we think. The brain is the control center, the commander of our body. As such, it gives directives for the body to follow. It condones actions it believes are necessary, and disavows actions that are unnecessary. A simple example to express this idea is that of reaching for something to eat. Let us say there is an apple on a table in front of you, and that you happen to be hungry. Your brain will alert you to the fact that you are hungry, then it will draw attention to the apple on the table. Your thought process will likely proceed in this manner. I am hungry, and I want something to eat. I also see that there is a viable apple on this table in front of me, so in order to satiate my hunger, I will retrieve it. What follows from this thought, of course, is you reaching for the apple and subsequently consuming it, the tangible actions. By thinking that previous thought and by deeming it necessary to retrieve the apple, as well as consume it, your brain consented to the execution of those actions. Now, this is a rather basic example of elaborating on the notion that actions originate from our thoughts, but it can be extrapolated elsewhere. The overall point is that we do not perform endeavors without any thinking whatsoever, even with impulses that seemingly appear out of nowhere. Impulses, or instantaneous reactions, are still given some thought, but it is amazingly fast, so fast that you hardly notice your brain giving the assent to go forward with them. There will be more elaboration on impulses later, and whether there is any thinking behind them. At this point, it is skeptical as to how irrational or rational impulses can be. For now, the attention will be directed to motivations and intentions. When you conduct any action or pursue any endeavor, the greatest concern is your motivation. Why are you acting the way in which you do? Why is this goal so important to you? This can also be labeled as your purpose, as in, what is your purpose for enacting specific actions? If we are looking to see what truly defines a person, their motives seem to be a good place to start. Here's another example. When investigators are probing a murder scene, the first question they ask besides, who did it, is, what was the motive? Indeed, what was the killer's reason for murdering the victim? A person's motivations and intentions can run contradictory to their tangible actions. They could be masking their malevolent intentions with seemingly benevolent endeavors. In such a case, it would be far more valid to ascertain their true motives, as well as question their actions. The ultimate decider of this person's character is not their facade or what appears on the surface, but rather what their internal motivations are for acting the way they do. If you are still uncertain as to what the message is for this point, take the example of a manipulative, narcissistic person. They appear to be caring for others prima facie, at first glance. However, if one scrutinizes their actions more closely and uncovers their motivations, they will find that their seemingly benevolent nature is nothing but a ruse. They do not sincerely render assistance, they do not help people for the sake of it, but rather, they do so in order to elevate their own status, position, or power. You are likely to have encountered such a person at some point in time, and the unfortunate thing is that there are too many of them out there. We will now turn away from the ultimate definer of a person as their thoughts, motivations, and intentions. The focus now is the argument that asserts a person's actions as the ultimate judge of their character. With external actions, it is certainly far easier to examine them because they are harder to conceal than internal thoughts. We cannot read minds, so we have to refer to the next best thing, how a person conducts themselves. Their conduct is what grants us insight into what they may be thinking and their motivations. Furthermore, it is more likely we are going to find a contradiction by examining their actions as opposed to what they say. For example, they can be like the sophists of ancient Greece, where they would use rhetoric to make themselves appear as someone they are not. A doctor, for example. However, their actions, or lack of correct action rather, would give away their falsity. There is no shortage of sophists these days, people who use rhetoric to pass themselves off as something they are not. A person who claims they are fit, yet they rarely, if ever, go to the gym. A person who claims to be intelligent, but rarely reads books, or engages in intellectual discussion, etc. With these examples, a way to debunk their sophistry is to simply ask, well, you can talk the talk, but can you walk the walk? In other words, prove to me that you are legitimate and not just a fraud. A powerlifter can prove that he or she is strong by lifting the weight they claim they can. They must be judged by their actions, the lifting of the weight, instead of their rhetoric, which does not prove anything. At this point, it cannot be helped if either thoughts or actions should be mutually exclusive in judging a person's character. This is said because in some cases, a person's thoughts or intentions run contrary to their actions. Meanwhile, in other cases, their actions run contrary to their thoughts and intentions. In the former case, the example was of the narcissistic person appearing benevolent with their actions. In the latter case, the example could be of a person genuinely wanting to help people, but their actions are severely misguided or detrimental. This notion is eloquently expressed by the quote, "The road to hell is paved with good intentions." Indeed, such a felicitous remark, as it highlights the dangers in attempting to forge a better future or pursue the greater good with dogmatic ideals. What may seem well-intentioned in one person's mind may be disastrous in another's. Before concluding, we must return to the issue of impulses. How rational or irrational are impulses, and how do they influence our conduct? Impulses, after all, are actions that we can choose to act on if we wish. Fundamentally, they are denoted as primarily negative actions that should be resisted. Examples of these impulses may be in the realm of various addictions, such as to food, to drugs, to sex, etc. Normally, a person is ennobled by others if they have the will to resist these impulses, and they are faulted if they give in to the temptation. Giving in to a temptation, especially one that brings about detrimental consequences to other people, will bring about the greatest condemnation. This is because, regardless of the thought or motive behind it, the action of giving in to the impulse is tangible. The consequences are clear, whereas the motives are not as obvious. With impulses, the probability is more so that one will be defined by their actions rather than their thoughts or motivations. To conclude now, we return to the burning question that was asked at the outset. What truly defines us? Our thoughts or our actions? The answer is that it depends. Because of the previous analysis, there is no definitive winner. Both our thoughts and our actions can run contra to each other, depending on what we attempt to achieve. We could believe that we are doing someone good by helping them in a certain way, but our actions say otherwise, as in they are far more detrimental than beneficial. In another case, others could believe we are genuinely helping them when our true, hidden intentions are that we are merely using them as pawns. At the end of the day, what truly defines us is whether our actions are aligned with our intentions. If we say that we are going to help others, then we must carry out actions that genuinely help others. If we proclaim the intention of becoming successful, then we must perform actions that manifest the intention, rather than pretending to become successful. What we should aspire to be is that of a consistent person, to align our thoughts with our actions, lest we run the risk of hypocrisy. Instead of worrying about whether your thoughts or actions will have greater sway in the judgment of your character, you should endeavor to align them. Because if you do, nobody can attack either your actions or intentions as false and disingenuous. There will be no ammunition for your detractors and adversaries to attack your character. Even if there is calumny on their part, your character will stand firm in the face of those petty attempts at dragging your name through the mud. Finally, be wary of other people's intentions and whether they are who they say they are. Additionally, evaluate their actions and attempt to deduce their true reasons for acting the way they do. Try to give them the benefit of the doubt, but do not willfully blind yourself either. No matter who you deal with, friends, family, acquaintances, and strangers, they can all manipulate you given the right opportunity, but they will be unable to hold such power over you if you scrutinize their thoughts and actions, no matter how innocent they appear. In a perfect world, such methods would not have to be employed, but as you know, we live in a world that is far from perfect.